You write this book, published only in Japanese, at least at first. And it, as I said at the outset, rockets to the top of the bestseller list in Japan, beating Harry Potter, which is amazing. And then what happens?
Yes, what happened next?
And why haven't I read this book, and why is it not on our bestseller list?
Well, yeah. What happened next was, of course, in Japan, I was constantly being interviewed. I was by the daily press, by the weekly magazines, by the monthly magazines. I was given monthly columns. I was writing for years, every month in the Japanese Economist, and the Japanese Newsweek. I was on their television. There's some
in Japanese?
Yeah, it's all in Japanese. There was some big live shows.
So your Japanese is good enough to explain economics on TV?
もちろん、経済はもちろん説明できるんですよ。
I wonder how many of our viewers will know what you're saying. That's impressive.
And so, but it was all in Japanese, So it was, in the media. There was some way you could see there's some pressure being applied, some high-profile live Sunday TV shows like canceled on the day, and then the senior executives inviting me around, embarrassed to try to explain. And the Japanese love the truth, so they did tell me the truth. Well, sorry, we had no choice. You see, our advertisers, the advertising revenue is very important, and it was it was our biggest advertiser, and told us Richard Werner can't be on this show. So you mean a company like Toyota, Canon, or something? Yeah, I can't say the name, but a company like that. Well, hang on. They have nothing against me. I have nothing against them. Why would they say that? Yeah, of course it's not them. And they also said that they have nothing against you, and we're all really sorry about this. But, is their bank saying that they have to say this? But hang on, I don't even criticize the banks because I show that it was the central. Well, yeah, you see, the bank had to say that because the central bank asked it to do so. So that's the chain of command, And so then I was cancelled in that show, or some magazine editions even. There was one, it was one of the top weekly magazines I was interviewed in. And it was very proper and formal. They came with several photographers and they've recorded. I checked the script, everything was a big deal. And they even then sent me the actual copy of the magazine, but there was no article of me. It was like last minute. They even forgot to take me off the distribution list. So I called them. I was thanks for sending this, but where's the article? Where's the interview? And they explained, well, we had to kill it because of pressure. So that happened on the one hand, but still, I mean, I would say more than half of the time, my interviews got through. I thought at the time, wow, that's pretty controlled. I now realize with hindsight, that was pretty open because once I went to the UK, it was like fully controlled. And, I did not have this media access anymore. But it was only in Japanese. So one day I got a call from a Reuters journalist. From Reuters, this name, British guy on the phone apparently. And he mentions my book. Oh, so I thought, that's impressive because it's all in Japanese. And usually, the foreign journalists, they don't speak Japanese. So I was quite curious. And I expected, he wants to interview me on the book. And then he said, oh, no, it's, no, sorry. It's about your book, but it's a personal matter. Really? Personal matter? Yes, I'm calling. It's a private matter. I want you to help my wife. Right. Well, I'm confused. Can you explain? Well, you see, her job is to translate your book. Well, hang on. This book has been translated. It's a great translation. I helped with it. The publisher, we sat together. We were really wordsmithing every sentence to make sure it's got the right nuance. I wrote it in English, yes, but it's a very good translation. What do you mean? Her job is to translate my book. Yes, her job is to translate it back into English. She's given a very tight deadline. And, if you give us the manuscript, the original English, then she's done with her job. Excuse me, what? I own all the language rights. I've sent it to some American publishers. I'm still waiting for the result. This is like a pirated translation. I'm sorry. I mean, I'd love to help you and your wife, but I can't do this against my own interests.
Right.
So I had to decline. Now, he did say where she worked, and it was one of the major, I don't want to say it, I don't want them to get in trouble, even though it's 24 years ago, but it was one of the major places in Japan that are more considered official, where you also think, well, hang on, why do they need to read this in English? Because the Japanese people are quite happy. If something is in Japanese, they will only read the Japanese. You've got a choice. Nobody will say, okay, I'll read the English. So it was clear there's somebody outside Japan who wants to read this, but who could use one of the major, what's considered government institutions as a translation bureau. Well, the puzzle was solved a few months later when somebody came to visit me from America, from Washington, head of one of the think tanks, an economist. I had met him before. He knows me. He's doing Japan. A lot of people came through to see me on Japan and asked me on my analysis. And so, we met, and first thing he says, Richard, great book you wrote on Japan. Princes of the Yen? Well, hang on, you don't read Japanese? No, of course not. No, I don't. But, the translation is circulating in Washington. and then, a few months later, I got the call from the U.S. Embassy. It was, clearly a Japanese lady working there, very polite, as you'd expect. Professor Werner, we have a request from the U.S. State Department. It's like, okay. There's a senior person from the State Department who wants to arrange a meeting with you. Well, I guess that's in Washington. I have no plans to go to Washington at the moment. Sorry. No, he's coming to Tokyo to see you. So I thought, okay, let's meet in a public place as opposed to a dark alley. And sure enough, when we met, the main message was, the CIA is watching you. That was the message. That was the main message. It's like there's no quizzing or trying to manipulate me or get me out. It's just the CIA is watching now what you're doing.
They weren't trying to learn from you. They were trying to tell you something.
No.
Boy, there's a lot of lying. And some of the worst deception surrounds your health. How come Washington never talks about the poison in your food supply? What about what's in your drugs? You have a right to know what goes into your mouth, and the more you know, the more distressing it is. That's why it's critical to seek out alternatives you can trust. As an alternative to the garbage that you can pick up at any store, we strongly recommend RE Fountain from Peak. It's a clean electrolyte designed for rest. It's got triple Biomax magnesium and no sugar, no artificial sweeteners, no artificial flavors. Everything in it is real. And it's good because staying up all night wrecks your ability to function. RE Fountain can help. It's not a sleep aid. It's not a narcotic, a sedative. It's what your body actually needs to recover and thrive. People here rave about it. We wake up feeling sharp and clear. Peak has really made a big difference. So if you care about actual health, then Peak is the way to go. PIQUE. And right now, you can get up to 20% off for life when you start your first month with Peak. Go to peaklife.com/Tucker. That's PIQUE life.com/Tucker. You will feel it the very first morning. It is great.
Actually, somebody suggested when I told them the story that also was my opportunity to ask for something. Like, be president of one of the Federal Reserve banks in the US as part of the deal to stop talking about credit creation. Actually, it reminds me, I need to finish another story I started. I told you about Keynes moving away from the truth.
I just want to pause and savor this for a moment. So you publish this book in Japan, in Japanese, explaining the Japanese recession, and within a few months you get a visit from the CIA.
Yeah. Well, I'd spilled the beans on what is the most powerful mechanism for both economic growth and prosperity, or arranging for the boom-bust cycles. And of course, this is something that's been happening across the globe in the last 200 years quite a lot. And I was mentioning names. And I need to tell you, to finish that before we come back to to Ben Bernanke and colleagues, I after that visit, all the US publishers sent back their polite letters turning down my book. I mean, imagine this is a book that was the #1 bestseller in Japan. It did have a chapter in it on the US. There was a link. I had a chapter on Asia, the Asian crisis, same story. And I had a chapter on my encounter with Alan Greenspan. And based on that encounter and some analysis, I concluded, and that was in that chapter, that actually the Federal Reserve is on track, and Alan Greenspan was still heading it at the time, was on track to create the biggest asset bubble in history. And they will do likely the same as in Japan, and it will be a crisis. It will be a bust, but because it's America, it's going to be a global financial crisis. That was in my book. It's published in the original Japanese in 2001. Now, I then found one publisher that has I don't want to mention the name, it's a very good name. And they have international offices, global, excellent top reputation, and their US operation is quite independent, has editorial independence. And I sent the whole manuscript to the CEO of the their US side, and they have excellent distribution in the US. And then I went to New York and I called him and said, I happen to go through New York. Can we meet? Oh, of course. We met in the Four Seasons. The first thing he said when he saw me is, Richard, thanks for sending me your book. I read your book. It's the best business book I've ever read. That's what he said. Of course, we'll publish it. So that's how the lunch started. And I thought, well, this is good. This is starting good. I better immunize him a little bit on what's going to happen next. People will approach him, and I experienced this in Japan. They will say that this is a dangerous book. That phrase was used. Some particular journalists working at the New York Times, but probably also rather, in the Mockingbird style, perhaps working for some of the agencies, they did some sort of activism against my book because I wanted a book launch on the Japanese book for the foreigners and foreign journalists in Japan at the Foreign Correspondents Club. And the head of the Foreign Correspondents told me that these US journalists were really trying to block that.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.